Yes, people, what's happening? Welcome back to Chelsea Fan TV and welcome to another episode of the Chelsea Fan TV podcast. Before we get into this episode, make sure you smash the likes on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and leave your thoughts in the comments below on whether you agree or disagree with anything we have discussed in this episode. As always, I'm joined by Lewis. Bro, great to have you. And actually, for a change, there's actually quite a lot of Chelsea stuff to talk about. The World Cup winding down. But let's get straight into it, mate. Yesterday, Chelsea back in action against Aston Villa, friendly before the Premier League season starts back up again after a week's training in Abu Dhabi. Wasn't really expecting a lot from it. A chance for some of the youngsters to get a run out, see what they can kind of do against an experienced side. We didn't learn an awful lot from it. We saw that Hutchinson looks very exciting. Lewis Hall looks good, which we already knew. But it came at a big price. We lost Armando Broja to an unconfirmed injury as of yet, but it looks like it could be relatively long term. I mean, mate, result irrelevant in these games, but in all honesty, apart from Hutchinson, we didn't really learn anything from this match. You're muted.
Sorry, my bad. Yeah, it's kind of just the same Chelsea that we've seen all season. Gets done in transition, barely creates anything. The football isn't inspiring at all. Yeah, it is just a friendly, so I'm not too fussed about the way we played or the fact that we lost again or that we didn't score again. It is what it is. We played like 3 first-team players and the rest were all youth options. Omari Hutchinson's the only one that stands out to me. I'd play him against Bournemouth just off that performance alone. We are so devoid of any creativity in attack and he's making chances for himself. I want to see how he does against Premier League opposition. At least put him in the squad for that game, at the very least. Other than that, I thought Rankin or whoever it was that came on to replace Broja looked good as well. Lewis Hall looked good in midfield. Other than that, no one else really impressed. First team or youth.
I mean, in terms of
nothing else.
In terms of the first team players, obviously we saw Jorginho, Aubameyang, and Cucurella. I thought Cucurella was good. Again, we didn't really learn too much about him that we didn't already know, but he performed pretty well. Jorginho, I felt was half decent in midfield, but I wanted to talk about Aubameyang a little bit. I really do think, and I know it could be a bit early to judge, but I'm just going to say it anyway. I think it's a dreadful signing. For 2 reasons. 1, because he's coming to the end of his career, but also 2, I've been a massive fan of the work that Todd Boehly and Clearlake have done since they've come in. I think they've done some really good things. Sanctioning the signing of Aubameyang, who purely was in Chelsea wanted because of Thomas Tuchel, knowing full well you're going to sack Thomas Tuchel in a few days' time is peak Chelsea of old. For me, it made no sense. And we're seeing now that this guy, if you create chances, he probably will put it in the net, but he's not the answer. He's not really going to get us the goals that we need to fire us at the table. And more often than not now, he's being used out wide. I mean, what are your thoughts on Aubameyang now that you've had a few months to kind of digest his arrival? And I thought yesterday he was poor as well. Admittedly, it was a friendly, but he offered nothing.
I think Aubameyang gets focused a lot more because he was one of the first teamers in that game. And you expect them to lead by example. And honestly, all the first teamers were poor. Jorginho got done in transition a lot that game. Cucurella, to me, was responsible for the goal. Why a left-back is running towards the right side of the pitch to defend the right-back's position and leaving 2 players exposed, I don't understand, but whatever. And Aubameyang did absolutely nothing. Had like 1 decent bit of link-up play with Hutchinson, and that was it. Didn't do anything else. And I understand the criticisms for Aubameyang, but all we did bring him in for was to score goals. That was it. And I always go back to the Arsenal game because if we just put a chance on a plate to him like we could have done in the first 15 minutes of the game where we had 2 opportunities to do it, if he had scored one of those chances, we look at him completely differently because he's turned up in a big game. We've probably beaten Arsenal because if you look at the game, Arsenal didn't make anything clear-cut. Their only goal came from a poor corner kick that we just handled even worse. I don't know. My problem with Aubameyang is that he's not a well-rounded player, but we didn't bring him in for that. We brought him in to score goals. And all that's done is expose how poor our creativity is from open play because we just don't feed him anything. Until Aubameyang starts missing clear-cut chances, I can't go at him because I'm not expecting anything else from him. I'm not asking him to link up play. I'm not asking him to dribble past 2 or 3 players or to make chances. I'm just asking him to put the ball in the net, and we don't put him in the position to do so. So you could say maybe it was short-minded from the board and everything, but I just look at the lack of creativity in our squad and I say that's the main problem. Because if we were more creative, Aubameyang scoring more goals, he looks a lot better. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, for sure. And it is fine margins. You know, he converts some of the chances, or players actually pick out a better pass to him, and it's a different story. We could be looking at him having 3 or 4 more goals. But I just feel that whilst, you know, yes, we don't create for him, and he's purely in the side to score goals, he offers very little other than that. I think we need a bit more from him all round. We didn't sign him for that, but I feel in games where if he's not scoring, he's not offering anything, basically, essentially.
The problem is because everybody else, the 10s aren't creating, the midfield isn't creating, and they're getting ripped apart. Aubameyang is sitting there getting 3 to 4 touches a game because we are just not feeding him enough. It's the same thing with Lukaku. Do you remember the 7 touches against Palace?
Yeah.
Everyone was laughing at him about it. How about we feed Lukaku a clear-cut chance? Maybe we get the ball to him more, and maybe he has more than 7 touches. Oh, no. Same problem.
And this is why I don't get that excited yet when we sign the likes of Nkunku, because I'm thinking until we, as you say, until we solve the creativity issues, you can have whoever you want up front in those front 3 positions, but it's not going to make any difference. And we can change the personnel up there, but if we don't solve the creativity issue, we're going to be having the same conversation next season, just about different players. Yes, we need to improve in that final third, but we have to solve the creativity issues to create the chances for those players to stick it in the net, because it's all very well criticising these forward players, as we have, and rightfully so, because it's not been good enough. But ultimately, unless we've got the suitable personnel behind, then it's quite hard to be super critical, because they're feeding off scraps, basically. So that's why, yes, it's good to improve the forward line, but ultimately we need to get someone that's creative in midfield, or someone that's creative from a wide position to help solve those issues. Yes, okay, can we do better than Aubameyang? Absolutely, but Aubameyang, as you said, would probably look better if we made more chances for him, because more chances you get, more chances are you likely to score. But sticking with the centre forwards, obviously came at a price. Chelsea's injury curse doesn't seem to be lifting anytime soon. It looks Amanda Broya's gone down with yet unconfirmed injury, but it didn't sound great. It let out a massive scream, couldn't get up, was stretchered off. No news yet on what that is, but it looks like it could be out for a while. This is another problem in a long line of problems that Chelsea have had this season. And really, mate, this accelerates the need that we've got to bring in a centre forward in January, whether that's short term on a loan or whether it's a permanent signing. That's got to be addressed now, because we can't go for the rest of the season potentially with Aubameyang and Havertz.
Oh, yeah. Just if I see Havertz up top again, I'm going to off myself. By the way, the difference between Aubameyang and Havertz is I've seen Havertz miss consistent chances. That's why I don't have the same patience with him. But like you were saying, we might have to go in for a striker, which is frustrating, because that should be the last position we're looking for right now. We had 2 strikers. Aubameyang was brought in for that goal-scoring issue. And it's shown that goal-scoring ain't even necessarily the problem. It's creativity. I don't know what we do, because I'd still rather we focus on our midfield and our defence first. Get wing-back depth in. Maybe bring in a goalkeeper if we can, before we look further forward. But we might have to. We're linked with Moukoko. I've seen that. Barely know anything about him, except he scored a lot of goals at Dortmund youth level. Might be a good addition for us, might not, but like doesn't really fill me with a whole lot of hope and glory. Ronaldo's obviously going to turn back round, and we're going to be linked with him again, and that's just going to be even worse. Like, if you thought Aubameyang was the problem, then I can't wait till you see Ronaldo step into the pitch. It's going to be even worse. But yeah, I don't know what we do. We might have to go in for a striker. It has to be another short-term option, I think, unless a gem pops up out of nowhere. But I don't know, because like we've only just been linked over the last day. And other than Moukoko and Ronaldo, I don't know who else we could be realistically linked with that could potentially come in and do a job. I've seen Depay pop out, but but again, he's the best option of the 3.
He is. But again, I would look at someone like Memphis Depay and think, yes, good player, but I know he kind of plays centre forward for Holland, but I don't know if he's really a centre forward. I don't know, but again, it would be a cheap option, and it wouldn't cost a lot of money. And we ideally don't want to spend a lot of money. Could do something short term. But it does raise an issue. Do we try and bring someone in like Depay, maybe on a 2 or 3 year contract, and he's a bit more long term, or I hate to say it, but before I get onto Ronaldo, let's talk quickly about Makuku. Obviously, that kind of came up in the last few days. Phenomenal record as in the Dortmund youth teams. He was part of the World Cup squad for Germany. I don't think he featured at all. Clearly a player with a lot of ability, but again, it's another one that is great for a few years' time potentially, but doesn't solve the issues that we need to solve here and now in order to try and finish in the top 4 and get Champions League football next season. So we've got to find a balance between getting the good youngsters in for the future, but also addressing the first team issues that have got to be solved now. And I think Makuku, yes, it would be a great signing, but I wouldn't want to sign him at the expense of getting someone in that could help us in the first team right away, whereas he's not going to be ready to help us in the first team straight away. But that leads us to Ronaldo, where, as you touched on, those links now, it's going to be much easier because he's a free agent. Chelsea are now suddenly we're more desperate because of the Broja injury. And suddenly, as we touched on, mate, we need a short-term fix, potentially. It's not going to be someone coming in on a long-term deal. It'll be very hard to bring in someone like a João Felix or a Rafa Leal or whatever in January to try and solve the issues. The likelihood of signing Ronaldo, whilst I still think is unlikely, it has got a lot more likely since this Broja injury. I mean, how do you feel about it in terms of likeliness of happening? Do you think this is something that Bowley would look to capitalise on now for a kind of a short-term fix? Because we know he's keen on it, or has been, but ultimately it'll be down to Graham Potter. I don't think he's going to be that interested in it, but there's no denying that the chances have probably gone up now of this happening.
All depends on Potter. Well, I don't know, because if Ronaldo joins, I don't even know if it's with Potter's say so or if it's just Bowley wanting it for the sake of being able to make a few shirt sales. I don't know. Like, I think this thing's gonna start to show a lot more legs over the next few weeks. Ronaldo, if he comes in, isn't gonna change anything personally. We're still not gonna be able to create for him, and he's not gonna be able to create for himself. He's probably less well-rounded than Aubameyang is, and people want Ronaldo in, which I really just don't understand. But if Ronaldo comes in, I'm just gonna guess either Potter has relented and let him in, or we've just accepted this season as a total write-off and we thought, fuck it, bring Ronaldo in, we'll make a couple shirt sales off his head. But on the pitch, it makes no sense, even for rotation purposes. And why would Ronaldo leave one bench to go to another bench? It's pointless. It makes no sense on either side. We don't look better for it. Ronaldo doesn't look better for it, and I don't think he salvages his legacy from a 6-month loan spell at Chelsea. It's just a pointless move all round. But if it happens, I just know we're not serious. I know it ain't serious.
Yeah. I mean, one thing for certain, this would 100% be happening if Roman was still here. This would be happening. This would be done, I think. But hopefully under Bowley, it might be a little bit different. But yeah, it's going to come down to Potter. I don't think Potter's keen, but ultimately we'll find out how much say Potter's really got. And if Ronaldo does turn up, I think it's going to be more because of Bowley rather than Potter giving it the go-ahead. But sticking with players, there's been a little bit of news about Rafa Leal. I know Chelsea have got a long-term interest in him, and reports from Germany, reasonably reliable journalists, saying that Chelsea held talks out in Qatar for Leal, and they offered £60 million, which was refused. Milan want £128 million, which is the release clause, and apparently Rafa Leal doesn't want to extend beyond 2024 at this stage. Leal's had a half-decent World Cup. I don't think he started many games for Portugal. He's made good impact off the bench, scored a couple of goals. 128 million quid, though, is a lot of money for someone who is still not really a finished product. And it's got to develop more into his game. I mean, I don't think I'd be happy spending 128 million on Leal. If we've got that much money to spend, I think we could spend it better, personally.
Yeah, 120 mil really don't make sense. Well, it makes sense from a Milan perspective. I actually get that. But from everyone else, no. That's a transfer fee that you put up if you just don't want anyone to come in for the player and you just price them out. But it doesn't mean we can't lower it, because we've seen the reports saying that they look at Pulisic as an alternative to Leal. They've got interest in Ziyech. We still might go in for Benacer in January. And I've always said that's a great way for us to start talks over Leal. Maybe put Pulisic in the deal and you can take 40, 50 million off potentially. Maybe put Ziyech in. You could potentially take the same off with the World Cup that he's been having. And that might benefit us in terms of bringing Leao in. Because if you take it below 80 million, I understand. But if we're raising it, we now have to look at the detriments of the player. And Rafael Leao's a great finisher, great dribbler. Obviously, you just have to look at him to know that he's strong and that he's fast. And I don't even need to describe all of that. But his work rate's come into question before. He's not the best presser on the ball. His passing stats aren't the best, so he's another one that needs chances to be made for him, as opposed to creating chances for others. Like, that profile, we kind of already have. Maybe not in a better player, but we have the stylistic profile in here. But he's just a better option, which is why, like, that's not the price tag I'm looking for. If I'm spending that much, I'm spending that much on a creative genius. Someone who can unlock low blocks, unlock all sorts of defenses. Not Leao, not right now. I think we should lower it, but if not, walk away from the deal, man. We don't need him that bad. We don't need him that bad. First and foremost is the midfield.
But plus also, you know, if he's keen to join Chelsea, he doesn't want to sign a contract renewal at Milan, that ultimately will bring the price down, because Milan won't want to lose him on a free. Next summer, he's got 1 year left. They can't get as much money potentially. But again, as we touched on earlier, bringing in Leao, great. We have got that sort of profile already, but Leao's probably better than the players who've got in that position. But he doesn't solve the creativity issues. That's the problem. We're just putting a different player there without the creativity behind him. So yes, he can create a few chances, but it's not like he's going to get 10, 15 assists a season and be the creative spark that we need. He'll just be a slight upgrade on what we've already got in that position. If you watch the way
AC Milan play as well, right? Sorry, I forgot to say this too. They are a transitional team. Like, they're a counter-attacking side. So it's, again, another forward who thrives in space.
Don't get space in the Premier League.
Right. This is why I'm saying... And I'm not saying he's going to be Timo Werner, but I'm going to say he's going to encounter the same issues Werner had. And for that sort of price tag, no. I don't want it. I
mean, another similar player, I mean, part of that same Portuguese national team, it's clear that João Felix's future is going to be resolved, if not in January, certainly in the summer. Again, he's another player that represented by Jorge Mendes, the Portuguese agent. Again, you know, he's looking at trying to find Felix a new club. I think Felix wants to leave Atletico Madrid. Reports saying that he could leave on loan. Aston Villa potential suitors for him, which I think would be mad, but you never know. Where do you stand on Chelsea and João Felix? I look at João Felix and think, very talented boy, but we've already got someone quite similar to Felix in Kai Havertz, where you don't really know what João Felix's best position is. And for him to thrive, the team's really got to be built around him. And I don't know if João Felix is a good enough player for a team like Chelsea to be building their team around him. I just don't know if that's the right way to be going. But reports suggesting it could cost maybe 80, 85 million pounds to get his signature. What are your thoughts on João Felix to Chelsea? Because you see a lot of people on Twitter that, you know, really wanting João Felix to come to the club. But as I said, it's just a similar profile to Havertz in terms of doesn't really score that many goals, and you don't really know what his best position is.
I've been very, very indecisive on Felix over the last week or so. I think he's Kai Havertz with better finishing and better creativity, but I think physically he struggles. The fact that he doesn't really have a lockdown position either is a bit of an issue, as well as his attitude issues that he's had at Atletico Madrid. Another one that I think doesn't really improve us right now, but if Havertz was to leave and we were to use that money to bring in Felix, I would be fine with it. Havertz has to go for Felix to come in, though, because between Mount and Havertz, we already have the two same players that do nothing but can fill in a position if you need them to. Felix would just be the third, and he'll still start over the pair of them, but it's about the profiles that you have in the squad, and we have too many of those. So if Havertz left, bring in Felix. If we keep Havertz, God forbid, then yeah, no to Felix. But that's the way I see it. They're both very similar.
Yeah, that's the thing. You've got to be careful whilst, you know, it's exciting and you can get carried away when you're linked to sort of big names, exciting players. Ultimately, you don't want too many of the same profile in the club. So as you say, you know, if Felix was to come in as a replacement for Havertz, great. But to come in as well as Havertz doesn't make any sense, because you just collected two of the same profile, that do a similar thing, and it's not really making much of a difference for us in terms of moving the needle at the top end of the pitch. But I mean, in terms of January, we're coming up to the window now. We've kind of said that Chelsea are going to need to do a lot of business. January could be so important for our season because if we get 2 or 3 quality players in, that could be the difference between us making a charge at the table or us ultimately falling short and it being a dreadful season. I mean, this is one of the most important windows for Chelsea in quite a while, isn't it?
Yes, but only because of how bad the last one was. I don't think we solve enough of our issues in January anyway. As long as the midfield at least gets some attention, I'm fine with whatever we do other than that. Unless Ronaldo comes in, obviously. But like the midfield is the only thing that we need to really prioritize. That and getting some wing-back depth. I don't expect us to sort out our goalkeeping issue, our creativity issue. Even getting a striker, I'd be surprised if we do it. But as long as the midfield gets sorted, we use that as a base and we build from there. Personally, I've already written off the season. It's up to the club to instill that faith back in me. But I've said from the start of the season, I don't have faith in this team making top 4. And they've beaten my already low expectations. So, yeah, I don't know what to make of it. But it is a big window, but I also don't think it's a window that we solve everything in. Like, just sort out the midfield and I'm happy.
Yeah, for sure. We've got to do something. 2 or 3 players come in and hopefully we can kind of move our way up the table. But slightly moving away from Chelsea, just moving it on to England. We don't need to debrief the World Cup or anything like that. But a lot of talk about whether Gareth Southgate should he stay, should he go? Ultimately, the FA aren't going to sack him. They're very happy with him in charge. So it'll be down to Southgate whether he stays or goes. But if he does go, one of the names being linked with the job, and he has expressed an interest in potentially being keen, according to Matt Law in The Telegraph and other sources, Thomas Tuchel, former Chelsea manager. How would you feel about Tuchel taking over as England manager? Because for me, I look at it and think knockout specialist in tournament football, second to none. You know, there wouldn't really be time to fall out with players because you don't spend a lot of time with the national team squads, small amount of time per year. It would seem, in essence, the perfect fit. Knows what it takes to win tournaments. I'd be bang up for it. I mean, I still feel, part of me still thinks he's got a lot to offer the club game, and maybe he's still a bit too young for international management. But I'd be keen to see Tuchel manage England. I mean, how would you feel about him coming in to replace Southgate if Southgate leaves?
Hey, if he was in charge for this World Cup, I think England are still in there personally. But that's also not a slight to Southgate. It's up to him whether he stays or goes. I wouldn't blame him for staying. He's in a very comfortable position. And he hasn't... We could question the in-game management all that we want to. And I think that's completely fair to do it. And that's what separates him from the top-tier managers in the world. But he's done the best with England that I've expected and even exceeded expectations the last 3 tournaments. So even though I don't think it's right, I get why the FA would stick by him. I get why Southgate would stay in the job too. He hasn't had a massive failure as England coach. Over exceeded expectations in the Euros and the last World Cup. I didn't expect England to go past the quarters this World Cup, so he hasn't really disappointed me in any remark. It's just the in-game management, and that's what Tuchel would be a lot better at. I think if he goes in, that England side could easily win a tournament under him, a Nations League, a Euros. World Cup might be a bit of a stretch, but I do think they'd be a bit more competitive. I think he gets the best out of Raheem Sterling for one. He was going to build Chelsea around Sterling, and we could see how that was working the first few weeks of the season. Even if everything else wasn't working, Sterling was. The attack, him with Harry Kane is an absolute dream. Like I was dreaming of a Lukaku-Kane swap deal over the summer, even though I knew it was just unrealistic as hell. Still would have been an unreal purchase for him. So I think for England, he's got everything that he needs to succeed. Everything that he needs. And it's nice also not to see him potentially join an English club, because I saw links with Liverpool and United, and no, I'm not ready for that just yet. So if Tuchel wants to join England, go. I can still support you, man, and I'd be just as happy with that. So yeah, bring him in.
Yeah, mate, this is it. I think that's the final step for England. You know, we've got the squad, we've got the players to win tournaments. Now, in the big moments, what makes a difference for me is an elite level manager, a top level tactician for those key moments in game management, which as you say, no, it's not a slight on Southgate. He just isn't quite as good in that department as a Thomas Tuchel would be. And I think when it really comes down to it in the big games, those moments are what win and lose you tournaments. And for me, Tuchel would be on the right side of those moments and would probably win you tournaments by doing that. So by all means, if he wants to be England manager, let's absolutely do it. But mate, to round out, let's quickly just do a little bit of World Cup predictions. Who are you fancying now in those semi-finals to make the final? I mean, look at France, Morocco. Morocco have had a good run, and it's great for African football how well they've done. And the re-emergence of Ziyech has been nice to see, I suppose, but also annoying that we haven't seen that in a Chelsea shirt. We've seen how good he can be, but then obviously in the Chelsea shirt, we don't really see how good he is. But it's been great for African football and Morocco to get that far. But ultimately, mate, in this semi-final, one step too far, the dream comes to an end for them? Or do you think they actually could make the final?
I think they make it hard for France. That defense is so hard to break down. And yeah, they've only conceded 1 goal the whole tournament.
Own goal as well.
And also, that's apparently shady because the goalkeeper's half Canadian, but the less said about that, the better. Morocco v France, though. Before I deeped their clean sheet record, I would have said France is still knocking them out. Now I'm a little bit unsure. I'll edge France in this one. It could genuinely go either way, though. It really could. And if Morocco make the final, that's chaos. But we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. I can't really tell for that one. And I'll be real, I can't tell for the other one. I know.
I think the other one. I think the other one's harder. Like I think France probably do just edge Morocco, but they'll make it difficult for him. But I wouldn't entirely rule out Morocco getting to the final potentially, you know, with the run they've been on. But I think it could be one step too far for them. In terms of the other one, though, Argentina against Croatia, that's a really tough game to call because I look at Argentina and yes, they've made the semi-finals, but ultimately for me, I still think they're an average side that heavily relies on Lionel Messi to produce a moment of magic, to unlock a defense or to score a goal. So for me, if Messi's on form, then you have to say Argentina have always got a chance. But there's something about Croatia that I don't know what it is. The midfield's outstanding in Kovacic, Modric, and Brozovic. They're hard to break down at the back. They defend well, and they're always in the game. And they got like that never say die attitude, but just makes you think that, you know, they could get to the final again. I think this game probably goes to penalties, but I don't know. I'd probably still say Argentina probably just shade it, but I wouldn't be surprised if Croatia do win it. I mean, it would be nice to see one of Kovacic or Ziyech win the World Cup, but who knows?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing with you. Like, I can't predict Argentina-Croatia. That one's just a penalty shootout and whoever wins. Because Argentina, I agree, they're completely average, but Messi is so capable and consistent with big game moments that doesn't even matter. Meanwhile, Croatia, that midfield speaks for itself. They'll run any team into the ground, club or country. The defense is surprisingly as solid as it was in 2018. That goalkeeper is unreal, and we should be looking at him personally. Kramaric has pulled up with a couple of goals this tournament. It's a very solid team that's flown under the radar for another World Cup. And I could genuinely see them hold it out to penalties. And God knows what happens there. But I could slightly predict France against Morocco. Yeah. I can't predict the Argentina game. I
tell you what annoying as well is that it looks like Gvardiol's price tag's probably going to have another couple of zeros added onto the end of it. He's been outstanding this tournament. And again, more teams are going to be interested in him now, which just makes the race that little bit harder for us. But ultimately, you know, we'll have to see. But I'll tell you what, it's mad how quick the World Cup's gone as well. Like 6 weeks, you're thinking, 6 weeks, no Chelsea. Hey, it's almost back round again. We play again in about, just over 2 weeks.
Yay! I can't wait.
Mate, we can't wait to get back up, start travelling back up and down the country to watch us stink out the gap.
At home. Well, you know how much we love that fixture,
mate. That's a big
once in the league,
mate. That one's mad, isn't it? Like I remember, like we've lost. I mean, away against Bournemouth away as well. I remember under Sarri, we went there and got hammered 4-0. It's not an easy fixture for us, that one. But I mean, we've got to be winning that, haven't we? Really, but. Seems like a good point to round out. Guys, make sure you smash the likes on the video. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to Chelsea Fan TV. Make sure you check out Lewis's channel as well, Carefree Lewis G. Check my one out as well, the Blues Brothers. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and we'll be back again soon with another episode.